This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 392, Those Who Care the Most Sell the Most, an interview with Mareo McCracken.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And today we ask the question, what's the true secret of sales success? According to our guest, Mareo McCracken, the secret is caring. Caring for others, caring for results, and caring for growth. According to Mareo, those who care the most sell the most. But before we get to the interview, I want to give you a heads up. The big announcement that's happening here at Sales Babble has been scheduled for October 26th. Just to kind of give you a hint of what it might be about, you may have noticed on LinkedIn, I've been publishing a new podcast called The Cannabis Advocate. Episodes have been going out maybe 2 to 3 a week. I was in Las Vegas the last week of August working the cannabis conference run by CBT, Cannabis Business Times. And the podcast is all about the cannabis business and the common challenges that all those businesses face in that industry. Check it out. And so, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Mareo. You ready to babble?
Yes, for sure.
Mareo, I got your book in my hand right here. In big red letters, it says, really care for them. But I believe the real title is, no one really cares about what you, no one really cares about you. They only care about what you do for them. How everyone can use the power of caring to earn trust, grow sales, and increase income, no matter what you sell or who you sell to.
Yeah. It's kind of definitely a play on words for sure.
It is. How did you come to this title?
Well, the focus of the book is that people who care the most sell the most. So that's kind of the simple in a nutshell. And there's lots of different ways to show you care. But in the sales world, people don't really care about you or your product or your company. They just want their results, right? And so the whole idea is if you stop focusing on yourself and you start focusing on other people and showing that through care, then things turn out usually better than they would have otherwise.
That's what I found. So that's why I was very excited to have you here on the podcast. Just to describe the book a little bit, it's a number of beliefs here, maybe about 100 of them, I guess.
Yeah.
And the beliefs are written in a way they're like tweets, little pieces of information and wisdom that you can point out. How did you come to that structure of the book?
A couple ways. Well, the first one is that's kind of how we consume information today. It's in short sound bites. Even on YouTube, we're not watching 2-hour videos on YouTube. We're watching 5, 10-minute, 30-second clips. On Twitter, it's 140 characters. Maybe it's 1,000 now, depending on like the settings that you have, right? LinkedIn, the shorter posts do better. So it's kind of how we want to consume information. The second reason is most sales reps I know don't read books. And so if you have a lot of words and a lot of paragraphs and just dense content, it's probably not going to get read. So I wanted to take something and put as much information in the smallest amount of words as possible. And that's kind of why I decided that format.
I like this a lot. I could see like before going to bed, like, just open up the book in a random spot, read it, and then dwell on that all night long. Right? That's how I saw that. There's also great quotes in here from many people who've been on Sales Babble, like Bob Berg, Alice Hyman, Mark Hunter. There's just a ton of people in here.
Yeah, those are people that have definitely influenced my thinking on my sales journey. And so whenever I learn something, I try to take notes about it. And then lots of those notes that I took ended up back in the book later.
Something that caught my eye right off the bat was in the introduction. And it's a very small introduction compared to most books. But you tell this McAfee story. Maybe you could share that with the audience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So in the 1800s in Western North Carolina, there was this traveling salesman. He was kind of a philosopher. He would give talks about how to live a better life, how to be a stoic, and then he would sell books. And so his main way, the way he made money, he'd give these free talks and then sell books to make money. And he sold a couple books, one by Virgil, one by Cicero, to a farmer named Joseph. And then that farmer read those books, really liked them, and named his next two sons Cicero and Virgil. And he had 11 or 13 kids, and two of them were Cicero and Virgil because he liked the book so much. And he was a farmer. And then Cicero, of those 13 kids, was the only kid that picked up that love for reading and that love for knowledge, really. And he went on to become a medical doctor and a dentist. And he was a very kind of well-respected, the county dentist for Buncombe County, North Carolina, in Western North Carolina, where Asheville is. And he ended up loving reading like crazy and started reading tons. And he really lived up to the name Cicero, where he was thirsting for knowledge, thirsting for truth. And all 11 of his children ended up becoming colonels, doctors, lawyers, all that kind of stuff. But it ended up being that when Joseph was in his 70s, he got in an accident on a farm, and his son, Cicero, who was educated, had to come and work on his arm and amputated his own father's arm, but he lived another 15 years because of his education and training. But that salesman, Cicero's name actually went by McAfee, who was the name of the traveling salesman. So that traveling salesman impacted Joseph so much that he named his son Cicero McAfee McCracken. And Cicero is my great-grandfather. And so the just because a salesman was doing his job and selling what he had to sell to help other people, it was able to impact generations in my family. And throughout my family history, that one traveling salesman changed the course of our family for sure.
Isn't it amazing? It's this whole butterfly effect idea, right?
Yeah.
That one thing can happen and it can ripple down for generations.
Yeah, exactly.
The first idea or reflection you have in here is you are a reflection of your choices.
Yeah.
I was surprised that was your first one, actually. I thought it'd be something about caring. Why isn't it?
Because in order to care, you first, I think, have to take responsibility and accountability for where you are currently and where you want to go. And caring, if you can do, there's a lot of people that care about things and they care about results and they care about the end result. But if they don't take responsibility for where they are, none of their caring will get put into practice. And so caring then becomes an idea rather than an action. And so you can, in your heart, care, but if your heart doesn't match your mind and your values and your goals, you're never going to act on it. And so in my belief, if you actually take responsibility first, then what you have in your heart can be shown. But if you don't take responsibility, you're never going to live to your potential, and you're always just going to blame other people. And so your life is a reflection of your choices, and that's all about taking accountability and responsibility for your current situation.
I've believed this myself in many times, but I've been believing it less, Mario, actually, as time goes on, because I've been bumping into a lot of people who don't really have a lot of choices.
That's true.
I mean, I'm just thinking right off the bat here right now, women in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
You know, they had a lot of choices. They could become professionals. They could hold government titles. Not anymore.
Yeah.
What do we tell people like this? And even here in the States and in Western countries, what do we tell people who are sometimes really boxed in and they can't get their way out?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances that physically change your situation and change your life. And there's a lot of physical situations that you have no control over. But I think the supporting quote is from Viktor Frankl, right? And Viktor Frankl, he was in a concentration camp. So yeah, his life wasn't a reflection of all of his entire life wasn't a reflection of his choices, but his inner life was a reflection of his choices. And I think that's where the differentiator comes from. No matter what's happening on the outside, your inner life of who you are on the inside is what you can take responsibility for. But yeah, you're right. If you're being controlled by a terrorist regime in Afghanistan, you can't say you have control over that. And that part of your life is not a reflection of your choices at all. For sure.
Yeah. I love that Viktor Frankl's book, Life Search for Meaning.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning, yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning, right. I remember there's a place in that book where he says that you knew people were giving up when they would take their last cigarette, which was the fiat money of the camp when they started to smoke it.
That's when
But
they knew, huh?
because they had given up.
Yeah.
He believed, even though they incarcerated his body, they couldn't take away his freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, in his
Yeah.
mind. They couldn't take away his freedom of his mind, right? Yep.
Yeah. And that I thought was really interesting. What are some of your favorite ones in here? Maybe we can walk through a few of them, and maybe you could share them with the audience.
A pretty common one that lots of people miss, I think, especially in this day of automation, is number 47. Is basically, in order to be given a seat at the table, in order to sell anything, you have to show value first, right? And so, in order to sell the value and like sell somebody something that's going to give them the benefit they want, you have to show it to them. And there's lots of ways to show it, but you have to demonstrate it in a way that'll help them understand it. And usually that comes in story form or example form, but you have to connect with them on what they want to see and almost give proof before you then try to justify why you're there. And lots of times it's the reverse. People go straight into the results rather than into the story that would help them emotionally connect to it. And so showing value is the prerequisite to being able to sell value. You can't sell anything till you show it first. And I think that's one thing that lots of people forget, especially with automation. They're just trying to sell before they show the value.
There's almost a running joke this summer showing up where we have all these bots who are posting social media posts. I get a lot of ads for software that can write a copy now for me. And now there's bots out there who are responding and replying and liking posts that are out there. So it seems like we don't even need people anymore.
Yeah, you can do everything without people.
Social media.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's asocial. That's the best way I've ever heard it. You're trying to automate relationships, and that's almost impossible. Like, it's not going to end well, probably, in my opinion.
It's not going to end well, is it?
Yeah.
Because people don't buy on logic, right? People buy on feelings and trust and thinking that you got their back, right?
Exactly. Yeah. When you have trust, you can do anything in any relationship. You can overcome any setback, any problem, and you can build off that. Like, when you have trust, you can sell on that, right? But if you don't have trust, nothing you do matters. Nothing you do matters if you don't have trust. And so eventually all of this automation, while important to do lots of the basic work, isn't the step needed to build that relationship. And it's not going to ever replace that step.
Well, won't we take this another step? Redundant. That's a bit redundant. Won't we take this? Maybe there's another quote in here that another item you want to pull out that builds upon that.
Yeah. So there's a common misconception about manipulation, that it's bad, and the way it's used is bad most of the time, because lots of definitions of words can be used positively or negatively, right? Like when somebody says, "Oh man, that was a brutal workout," that actually means it was a good workout. Whereas if somebody says, "Oh, that person is a brutal owner of his dogs," that means it's a bad definition. But a brutal workout's a good definition. And manipulation, I think, people only see the negative side of manipulation. But when you go to a chiropractor, they manipulate your body and make it better. You go to a massage therapist, they manipulate your muscles, and your body then is able to heal itself. So manipulation is just the movement of things. And so it could be the movement of ideas. It could be any way you move something. So manipulation where there's consent involved is good. Manipulation without consent is bad. And that's where the difference comes in. And so if you manipulate people without consent, they'll hate you, right? And that's the same like boxing or sex crimes. What's the difference between boxing? If you're boxing with someone, if there's consent, it's a boxing match. If there's not, you're a criminal and you're going to go to jail, right? And so it's the same in sexual relations. If there's consent, it's not a crime. If there's no consent, it's a crime. And that's the same in sales. If you manipulate someone without their consent, that's what most salespeople are known for, or they try to do, then it's wrong. But if you say, "Hey, I'm going to share some insights with you. I'm going to share some ideas, and I'm going to share some stories, that these stories will show you how your life could be better," then that type of manipulation is positive manipulation, and both sides have agreed to participate.
Is it consent when I click on clickbait?
Probably not. It depends on the clickbait, right? If the clickbait is something that you're actually interested in, and then the content. So clickbait is hard to define it, because if the title doesn't match the content, then it's clickbait, and then there's no consent, right? Because the title doesn't match. But then there's other clickbait where they're using words and triggers that do inspire you to click on it, but then the content matches the catchy title. And so then technically it falls under clickbait category, but it's not clickbait because the title matched the content. And if that's the case, then I think that's consent, because you wanted that title. But if the title doesn't match the content, then that's negative or wrong manipulation. That's lying.
I love that. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think you're spot on, Mario. For fun, I got the book here. Here. I'm randomly picking one.
Okay.
All right. Number 41.
Ooh, 41. Okay. I don't have that one memorized, so let me check it.
I'll read it.
Oh yeah, I got this one. Yeah, this is nice.
We all have some desires. We all have some of the same desires. While they might be expressed in different ways, when you understand what drives people to do what they do, you can help them get what they want. We all have the desire to be creative and in control. We should have the desire to improve ourselves and those around us. Use those desires to help others make better buying decisions.
So everybody's always going to make some type of buying decision. That decision might be no, I'm not going to buy. That decision might be I'm going to go with an inferior product. That's a decision. So a better buying decision as the ending point is actually the starting point. It's, hey, why do you think what you're giving to that person is better than their other options? And so if you have that foundation clear, then you can say, okay, then what desire does this person have? Does this person just want to keep their job and not rock the boat? Then that's their desire for security. Or is this person an innovator and they want to really change how their business operates? Well, their desire then is to be a game changer and to innovate. So part of sales is figuring out the other person that you're working with, what their desires are. And then if you can help them achieve, because goals are one thing, goals are objective typically, and they're material based or physical based, often in a sales world, but desires are more of the emotional side of things. So when you can connect the emotional to the physical, you have a much better chance to be able to continue to build upon that trust that you've already created.
You have a lot of opinions about this stuff. I'm assuming it's built upon real life experiences.
Yeah.
Where has there been an example in your life where you've actually lived some of this, where you have been able to show the value, be able to generate desire within a client who may not have had it at the beginning?
Oh, for sure. All the time. Yeah, that's something that as a salesperson, that's your job, is to help people find interest that didn't initially reach out to you to find interest. So they didn't know they were interested until you were able to show them they were interested. So one of my previous assignments, I was working with a very specialized investment company that would manage investments for people who were under professional guardianship. So what that meant is these people were incapacitated in some way. They either didn't have the mental capability, or they were underage, they were in a severe accident, some way they had severe mental issues, they were incapacitated. So they had a professional guardian taking care of them and being responsible for their assets. So the sale in this investment management, and they might have a trust of $10 million or something, right? And it was managed by a professional guardian. There were certain laws that they had to manage that investment with. And so lots of times, to be the most safe and the most secure, they would just go down to their bank, the professional guardian, and just give it to the bank and say, hey, take care of this money. And they wouldn't actually want to invest it in any other way because they were so scared of losing the principal that they weren't willing to invest it. But one of the biggest things that we had to show them was, under the trust laws of taking care of someone with guardianship, is you actually were required to grow the money and keep up with inflation, or you were actually not doing your job to the person you have the fiduciary responsibility to take care of. So by just putting it in a bond, you're not actually going to be able to do your job. You're actually breaking the law. And so they weren't interested, but lots of times you have to educate them. But before they're allowed to educate them, you have to give them some kind of insight that says, oh, that'll help me do my job better, something of value to them. So there were lots of ways you could introduce that to people, but we would call them on the phone and say, hey, we have this little tool that we've created that'll help you do your job better. And we didn't word it exactly like that. And they'd say, if you want access to it, I'd love to share it with you. You have 10 minutes to let me share 4 insights of how you can do your job better as a fiduciary. And they would say, sure, I'd love to know how I can do my job better because I don't want to get sued, because that's the biggest fear in that industry is they get sued by other relatives. And so, yeah, there's so many examples where somebody didn't know that they needed what you had. And then once you could educate them and build that trust a little bit, and you cared enough to find out what's going to help them and has nothing to do necessarily with your product. And then once they build that trust, then you can introduce them and say, oh, just so you know, there's another thing that might help you, right? And then you can introduce your product that way.
I really like the idea of being a fiduciary for your clients. Salespeople often don't think of it in terms of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
They got more of a transactional, mindset, but that's applicable in selling too, not just in investments.
Yeah, for sure. And the reason though is because of how salespeople are paid most of the time. Is they're paid to have a transactional mindset. So if the pay structure is adjusted, then they might be able to adjust their relationship too.
I could go on and on about comp plans. But people here in Sales Babble heard me doing this before, so I'll hold it up. Next, my penultimate question is, what's your favorite quote in the book?
That's a good one. Right now, it's Bo Malosnik, who's actually the CEO and founder of the company I'm currently with, where I run the sales and marketing. His quote is, "Apathy is the enemy." And I think apathy is the enemy of anything good. So if you want to care about someone, but you don't care enough, that's apathy, right? Or you want to get in shape, but you don't care enough, you have apathy, right? Or you want to help someone, but you don't want to help enough. I think apathy is the enemy of anything worthwhile. And so if you can overcome apathy, you can do a lot of things and you can help a lot of people. And so today, that's my favorite quote.
Great quote. Great quote. Something that can apply to all of us. If people want to connect with you, Mario, if they want to reach out and chat with you, what's the best way of doing that?
So LinkedIn is usually the best way. Mareo McCracken. I'm the only Mario on there with an E and a McCracken as the last name. So I'm the only Mareo McCracken there. And my name is spelled Mareo, so it's not too hard to find me.
So why is your name misspelled?
That's a good question. So long story short, my mother, she's from Germany, and she was doing her PhD in the United States in ancient German literature. So she was reading Altdeutsch, the Old German. And in southern Germany, southern Bavaria, she found these documents and transcripts with that word Mario, M-A-R-E-O, pronounced Mareo, she thinks. But it was the only place she found them. And in her translations and all, she was trying to figure it out. She thinks it has some kind of Latin influence because it ends in an O, and that's not typically a German word. Yeah. But it's from around the 1400s, these documents that she was translating for her PhD thesis. And she thinks that they only used it when they were talking about victory after a battle. So she thinks it means victory after a battle, but she doesn't really know. And there's no corroboration besides these 7 or 8 documents that she found in this one little village in southern Germany. So that's what she thinks, but who knows?
Oh, what a great story. What an intelligent woman. I love it. The book is on Amazon, I'm assuming?
Yep. It is. Really care for them on Amazon. Yep.
Really care for them. Mario, thank you very much for babbling here on Sales Babble.
Yeah, thanks. Great questions. Love talking with you. Thank you.
I'm reminded by the quote that's attributed to Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And this has been proven true in my life many, many times. I don't know how often I had a deal where I may not have had the best price or all the features. The competition may very well have had a better product. But the reason the buyer picked my product was because they picked me, because they knew, they had that feeling that I had their back. And if things didn't work out, if there were problems, and inevitably there are always going to be problems, that they could trust that I would be there for them. Keep that in mind, folks. It's not how much you know. It's about how much you care. To find Mario, you can find him in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. And if you found value in this episode, please share it with a friend, just one friend. Word of mouth is how podcasts grow. If you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. That's all I got for this week. Until next week, which, by the way, we actually have 2 people joining the podcast. That should be interesting. And the 3 of us are all going to be talking about selling. Until then, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.